The detection arrays lit up across Earth's orbital defense network at exactly 0300 hours. Something massive had just entered the outer solar system, and it was heading straight for humanity's homeworld. Admiral Jack Murphy was pulled from his sleep by the emergency call. He arrived at Earth Defense Command within 20 minutes, still buttoning his uniform as he stepped into the operations center. The main display showed a sight that made his blood run cold. Thousands of contacts, each one representing a ship far larger than anything humanity had ever built. How many? Murphy asked, though he dreaded the answer. 9,700, sir, replied Commander Kate Morrison, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel just beyond Neptune's orbit. Current trajectory puts them at Earth in 72 hours. Murphy stared at the display. Earth's entire defense fleet consisted of 200 ships, most of them patrol cruisers and destroyers. Against nearly 10,000 vessels, they wouldn't last more than a few minutes in direct combat. Have they attempted communication? Murphy asked. Yes, sir. It came through 15 minutes ago. Morrison brought up the message on the secondary screen. The alien that appeared was tall and angular, with gray skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. It wore what looked like military regalia, covered in symbols and decorations that probably represented countless victories. Primitive species of Earth, the alien began, its voice translated by the computer into flat, emotionless English. I am Supreme Commander Zelthar of the Vakrian Dominion. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire. You will surrender all military assets, dismantle your planetary government, and prepare your population for reassignment. You have 72 hours to comply. Resistance will result in the complete destruction of your species. The message ended. Murphy felt the weight of every eye in the operations center on him. Get me President Hayes, he said quietly, and wake up everyone on the Defense Council. We're going to need every good idea we can get. Within the hour, the emergency session began in the secure bunker beneath Geneva. President Linda Hayes sat at the head of the table, flanked by the world's top military commanders and scientists. General Paul Griffin represented the ground forces, while Dr. Helen Ross spoke for the scientific community. Options? Hayes asked, cutting straight to the point. We don't have many, Griffin admitted. In a straight fight, they'll cut through our fleet like a hot knife through butter. Our weapons are designed to fight other humans, not an alien armada with who knows what kind of technology. Then we don't fight them straight, Dr. Ross interjected. Everyone turned to look at her. She brought up a holographic display of the solar system. For the past decade, we've been militarizing the asteroid belt. It was supposed to be a defense against potential threats, and now we have one. Murphy leaned forward, interested. Explain. We have 3,000 asteroids equipped with hidden weapon systems. Railguns, nuclear mines, drone launchers. We also have the Hellfire missiles in deep storage. They were deemed too dangerous to use in Earth's orbit, but out in the belt? She smiled grimly. They could turn the tide. How do we get them into the belt? Hayes asked. If we send our fleet out there, they'll know something's up. We make them chase us, Murphy said, the plan forming in his mind. We send a small force to meet them. Make it look like Earth's primary defense. When they engage, our ships retreat into the asteroid belt. The aliens follow, thinking they're pursuing a beaten enemy, and we activate the weapons. It's suicide for whoever goes out there, Griffin said bluntly. I'll go, said a voice from the back of the room. Captain Ryan Davis stepped forward. He commanded the UES Defiance, one of Earth's newest destroyers. Give me 30 ships and I'll make them think we're putting up humanity's last stand. When we retreat, they'll follow. They'll think they've already won. Hayes looked at the young captain for a long moment. You understand what you're volunteering for? Yes, ma'am. Someone has to buy time for the trap to work. Might as well be someone who knows what he's getting into. The president nodded slowly. Then make it count, Captain. Make them remember that humans don't go down easy. The next 72 hours were a blur of preparation. Captain Davis and his volunteer crew said their goodbyes to loved ones. The asteroid belt defenses were activated and tested. Every available ship was positioned in strategic locations throughout the solar system. Earth held its breath and waited. When the Vakrian ultimatum expired, Supreme Commander Zelthar gave the order to advance. His massive fleet moved through the solar system like a tidal wave of metal and death. They detected Captain Davis's squadron almost immediately. 30 vessels, Zelthar's tactical officer reported. Small, primitive design. Minimal shielding. Zelthar studied the human ships on his display. They were arranged in a defensive formation between his fleet and Earth. Brave, perhaps, but ultimately pointless. Destroy them, he ordered. Let this be a lesson to any species that considers resisting the Dominion. The Vakrian fleet opened fire. Their weapons were beyond anything humanity had encountered before. Energy beams that could slice through a ship's hull like paper. Missiles that tracked their targets through any evasive maneuver. In the first minute of combat, 5 human ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light. Captain Davis gripped his command chair as the Defiant shook from near misses. All ships execute retreat pattern Delta. Make it look panicked, but keep the formation tight enough that they'll follow. His remaining ships turned and burned hard for the asteroid belt. Behind them, the Vakrian fleet pursued. To Zelthar, it confirmed everything he believed about humans. They were weak, easily frightened, and no match for the Dominion's might. They're running to their asteroid field, his tactical officer observed, probably hoping the debris will provide cover. Then we'll dig them out, Zelthar replied. Increase speed. I want this finished before the day is done. The Vakrian fleet entered the asteroid belt in full pursuit. Captain Davis's ships weaved between the tumbling rocks, the aliens following close behind. On Earth, Admiral Murphy watched the tactical display with his hand hovering over the activation switch. Almost there, Morrison said, counting down the distances. Vakrian fleet is now at optimal engagement range. All weapon stations report ready. Murphy waited 5 more seconds, watching as more of Davis's ships were destroyed by Vakrian fire. The captain's voice came through, distorted by distance and interference. We're in position, Admiral. Light them up. Murphy pressed the switch. 3,000 asteroids suddenly revealed their true nature. Panels slid open on their surfaces, exposing weapon systems that had been hidden for a decade. Railguns began firing, launching tungsten rods at speeds that made them nearly impossible to dodge. Nuclear mines activated, creating a deadly minefield that the Vakrians were now flying through at high speed. The first wave of attacks destroyed 800 Vakrian ships in 30 minutes. Explosions lit up the darkness of space like a deadly fireworks display. Zelthar watched in disbelief as his fleet, which had seemed invincible just moments before, was torn apart by hidden weapons. Evasive maneuvers, he shouted. Return fire on those asteroids. But the asteroids were too many and too spread out. Every time the Vakrians destroyed one, 3 more revealed themselves. The railguns fired with mechanical precision, and the nuclear mines were placed with expert care. Whoever had designed this defense knew exactly how to hurt an advancing fleet. Sir, we're losing ships too fast, his tactical officer reported. If we continue forward, we'll lose half the fleet before we even reach Earth. Zelthar's 4 eyes narrowed. This wasn't supposed to happen. Humans were primitives, barely capable of space travel. How did they have weapons like this? Pull back the outer formations, he ordered. Bring the heavy cruisers forward. We'll blast through this ambush with sheer firepower. It was a mistake. The heavy cruisers were larger and more powerful, but they were also slower and less maneuverable. As they pushed forward, they became perfect targets for the railguns. In the chaos, Lieutenant Jake Foster and his fellow interceptor pilots launched from hidden positions within hollowed-out asteroids. Foster's fighter was small and fast, designed for quick strikes. He dove through the debris field, targeting the sensor arrays on a Vakrian destroyer. His missiles hit home, blinding the ship. Before the aliens could react, he was gone, vanishing back into the asteroid field. Like shooting fish in a barrel, Foster muttered to himself, circling around for another attack run. All across the belt, human pilots were doing the same thing. They used the asteroids for cover, striking at vulnerable points before disappearing. The Vakrians found themselves fighting an enemy they couldn't pin down, couldn't predict, and couldn't escape. On his command ship, Zelthar finally understood the truth. He wasn't hunting frightened prey. He was the one being hunted. The humans had turned his own momentum against him, drawing his fleet into a kill zone specifically designed to destroy large formations. How many ships have we lost? He asked, his voice quiet. 2,000 and climbing, sir. 2,000 ships. In less than an hour, humanity had destroyed more Vakrian vessels than any enemy in the Dominion's history. And they were... The Vakrian fleet pushed through the asteroid belt like a wounded animal, desperate and dangerous. Supreme Commander Zelthar had committed everything to the advance, ordering his ships to ignore the asteroids and focus solely on reaching Earth. It cost him another 600 vessels. But finally, his battered armada emerged from the killing field. "Status report," Zelthar demanded, his 4 eyes fixed on the tactical display. "We have 7,300 ships remaining, sir. Many are damaged. Crew casualties are estimated at 40,000. His tactical officer hesitated. "Sir, the Dominion has never lost this many ships in a single engagement." Zelthar slammed his fist on the console. "These humans will pay for every ship with their entire civilization. Continue the advance," but as his fleet moved toward Earth, Zelthar's science officer approached with a datapad, his expression troubled. "Commander, I've been reviewing the intelligence files we collected on Earth. There's something you need to see." "I don't have time for academic analysis," Zelthar snapped. "Sir, it's about human history. They've been fighting wars for 10,000 years. Continuous warfare against themselves. Their largest conflicts killed hundreds of millions of their own kind. They've perfected the art of killing in ways we never considered." Zelthar stared at the science officer. "Why wasn't this in the initial report?" "Because the initial assessment team dismissed it as irrelevant. They assumed primitive internal conflicts wouldn't translate to effective space warfare." The science officer pulled up images of human history, ancient battlefields, world wars, nuclear explosions. "Sir, we're not fighting a primitive species. We're fighting a species that has survived by being better at war than anything else on their planet." For the first time since entering the solar system, Zelthar felt genuine fear. On Earth's moon, Commander Sam Bennett watched the approaching Vakrian fleet through his command center's viewscreen. He commanded the lunar defense batteries, weapons so powerful they'd been kept secret even from most of Earth's own military. Around him, his crew waited at their stations, fingers hovering over firing controls. "Range?" Bennett asked calmly. 30 seconds to optimal firing solution," his weapons officer replied. "All mass drivers are charged and ready." Bennett had spent 5 years on the moon, overseeing the construction of these weapons. Mass drivers were essentially giant railguns built into the lunar surface itself, capable of launching projectiles at incredible speeds. Each one could punch through the hull of a capital ship. Earth had 60 of them, weapons-free, Bennett ordered. "Fire at will." The moon shuddered as the mass drivers released their payloads. Refrigerator-sized chunks of tungsten screamed through space at velocities that made them nearly impossible to track. The first salvo hit the Vakrian formation before they even knew they were under attack. A Vakrian destroyer simply ceased to exist as a tungsten round passed through it from bow to stern. Another cruiser broke in half when 3 projectiles hit simultaneously. Explosions rippled through the alien fleet as ship after ship was struck by the lunar bombardment. "They're breaking formation," Bennett's tactical officer reported. "Looks like they're trying to spread out to make targeting harder." "Adjust fire patterns to compensate," Bennett replied, "and activate the secondary batteries." From hidden positions around the moon's surface, smaller weapons installations revealed themselves. Missile launchers, laser arrays, and particle beam cannons all opened fire in a coordinated assault. The Vakrians found themselves under attack from multiple angles, unable to effectively return fire without exposing themselves to more incoming rounds. In orbit above Earth, Colonel Amy Price gave the order that would change the nature of the battle forever: release the swarms. From orbital platforms scattered around the planet, millions of small objects began launching. Each one was about the size of a basketball with a simple but deadly purpose. These were combat drones, autonomous weapons designed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer numbers. The drones moved in coordinated patterns, like schools of fish in the ocean. They approached the Vakrian ships in waves, dodging point defense fire with rapid, unpredictable movements. When they reached their targets, they attached themselves to the hull and detonated shaped charges designed to penetrate armor. Lieutenant Foster, still flying his interceptor through the chaos, watched in awe as thousands of drones swarmed a Vakrian battleship. The massive vessel tried to shake them off, firing its weapons in all directions, but there were too many. Within minutes, the battleship's hull was breached in dozens of locations. Atmosphere vented into space and the ship went dark. "They're like piranhas," Foster muttered, pulling his fighter around to attack another target. On the Vakrian command ship, Zelthar watched his fleet being torn apart by weapons and tactics he'd never encountered. The humans fought like nothing he'd ever seen before. They used drones as weapons, fired projectiles instead of energy beams, and seemed to have prepared for this battle for years. "How many ships now?" he asked, already knowing he wouldn't like the answer. 4,000 remaining, sir. We're losing approximately one ship every 15 seconds. 4,000 from 9,700. In less than 12 hours, the humans had destroyed more than half of his fleet. The Dominion Council would have his head for this failure, assuming he survived long enough to report back. A new alert sounded on his console. Zelthar looked at the tactical display and saw something that made his blood run cold. 20 new contacts had just appeared on the far side of Earth's moon. These were different from the other human ships, larger and more heavily armed. Admiral Murphy sat in his command chair aboard the UES Vengeance, watching the battle unfold. He'd kept his main fleet hidden until now, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Vakrians were disoriented, their formations broken, their commander desperate. Now was the time to finish this. All ships engage at will, Murphy ordered. Target their command vessels first. Cut the head off the snake. The human fleet emerged from behind the moon like vengeful ghosts. These were Earth's newest and most powerful warships, equipped with weapons reverse-engineered from captured alien technology and improved with human innovation. They hit the Vakrian fleet from an unexpected angle, catching them between the lunar defenses and this fresh assault. Commander Kate Morrison, serving as Murphy's tactical officer, coordinated the attack with precision. She'd studied every major naval battle in human history, from ancient sea warfare to modern space engagements. Now she applied those lessons against an enemy who'd never faced such tactics. Target the ship at coordinates Delta 7, she ordered. That's their command vessel. 3 ships. Focused fire on the bridge section. 3 human destroyers turned as one, their main guns tracking the Vakrian command ship. Zelthar saw them coming but couldn't react fast enough. The human weapons were different from anything his shields were designed to stop. Instead of energy beams, they fired solid projectiles at incredible speeds, and his shield simply couldn't catch them all. The first round punched through his forward shields. The second hit the hull. The third penetrated into the bridge itself. Zelthar had one final moment to realize how badly he'd underestimated humanity before the bridge explosive decompressed. He died still trying to understand how primitives had defeated him. With their commander dead and their fleet shattered, the remaining Vakrian ships began to panic. Some tried to retreat, others fought on out of desperation or duty. But they were no longer a coordinated force. They were individual ships trying to survive against an enemy that had prepared for this moment for years. Major Chris Taylor led his Marine boarding teams toward a damaged Vakrian cruiser. Their pods attached to the hull and shaped charges blew through the armor. Taylor was the first through the breach, his rifle raised and ready. The Vakrians inside weren't prepared for humans to board their ship. Most species surrendered once their vessel was disabled. Humans apparently had other ideas. Taylor's team moved through the corridors with practiced efficiency. They'd trained for years in close-quarters combat, perfecting techniques that went back to ancient boarding actions on Earth's seas. The Vakrians, for all their technological advantage, had never needed to develop such skills. Secure the engineering section, Taylor ordered. Plant the charges and get out. We've got 3 more ships to visit tonight. His team moved deeper into the alien vessel, fighting past confused defenders. When they reached the engineering deck, they placed explosive charges on key systems. 3 minutes later, they were back in their pod and away. The Vakrian cruiser exploded 30 seconds after that. Across the battle space, similar actions were playing out. Human Marines were boarding disabled vessels, stealing intelligence, destroying ships from the inside, and generally proving that space combat didn't end when a ship's weapons went offline. Dr. Helen Ross watched the battle from Earth Defense Command, monitoring the performance of her weapon systems. The Hellfire missiles had exceeded expectations. The drone swarms were devastating. The mass drivers were performing perfectly. Everything she'd designed and built was working exactly as planned. "We're going to win this," she said softly, almost unable to believe it. Commander Morrison heard her through the command channel. The scattered remnants of the Vakrian fleet tried to escape into the outer solar system, but Admiral Murphy had prepared for this moment. He'd positioned hunter-killer groups throughout the system, specifically designed to track down fleeing vessels. Earth couldn't afford to let anyone escape and warn the Dominion about what had happened here. Lieutenant Commander Scott Allen commanded one of these hunter groups, consisting of 3 fast destroyers and a dozen interceptor craft. His task was simple: find any Vakrian ships in his designated sector and destroy them. No survivors, no mercy. Contact, his sensor officer announced. 3 Vacrian frigates heading toward the outer system at maximum speed. They're running dark, trying to avoid detection. Alan studied the tactical display. The alien ships were moving fast, but his destroyers were faster. And they had the advantage of knowing the solar system far better than the invaders did. Plot an intercept course, Alan ordered. Use Jupiter's gravity well to slingshot us ahead of them. I want to cut them off before they reach the jump point. His ships accelerated toward Jupiter, using the massive planet's gravity to increase their speed without burning extra fuel. It was a maneuver humans had perfected over decades of solar system exploration. The Vacrians, unfamiliar with local conditions, didn't anticipate it. Alan's destroyers emerged ahead of the fleeing frigates, blocking their escape route. The Vacrian ships tried to change course, but it was too late. Human missiles found their targets with ruthless efficiency. Within minutes, 3 more alien vessels became expanding clouds of debris. Sector 7 clear, Alan reported to Earth Defense Command. Continuing sweep pattern. Similar scenes played out across the solar system. Captain Eric Stone of the UES Relentless pursued a group of Vacrian survivors trying to reach the jump point beyond Mars. His crew had spent the last 16 hours hunting alien ships, and they'd become very good at it. They're hiding in the debris field from the battle, Stone's tactical officer reported, using the wreckage as cover. Stone smiled grimly. That's our wreckage. We know every piece of it. Launch the sensor drones and map everything in that field. Find me those ships. Dozens of small drones spread through the debris field, their sensors scanning every object larger than a basketball. Within minutes, they'd identified 6 Vacrian vessels trying to hide among the wreckage of their own fleet. There you are, Stone muttered. Weapons, target the ships at coordinates I'm sending you. Fire on my mark. The Relentless's main gun spoke as one. The Vacrian ships never knew what hit them. They'd been so focused on hiding that they hadn't kept proper watch on their surroundings. It was a fatal mistake. But not all the Vacrian survivors were running blindly. Near Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, a group of 200 ships had formed a defensive position. They were led by Vice Commander Tarek, the highest-ranking Vacrian officer still alive. He'd gathered every ship he could find and prepared to make a stand. We will not run like cowards, Tarek announced to his fleet. We are warriors of the Dominion. We will fight these humans and show them what it means to face our empire. Admiral Victoria Lane received the report about the Vacrian defensive position with interest. She commanded the heavy cruiser squadron that had been held in reserve during the main battle. Now Murphy had given her the honor of dealing with this final concentration of enemy forces. How many ships do they have? Lane asked. 200, ma'am. They're arranged in a defensive sphere around Europa. Looks like they're using the moon's gravity well as part of their defensive strategy. Lane nodded thoughtfully. The Vacrians had finally learned to use local conditions to their advantage. Too little, too late, but at least they were learning. Open a channel, she ordered. Let's give them one chance to surrender. Her communications officer established the link. Lane's face appeared on every Vacrian ship's display, her expression hard but not cruel. Vacrian forces, this is Admiral Victoria Lane of the Earth Defense Fleet. Your fleet is destroyed. Your commander is dead. You have no chance of escape. I'm offering you one opportunity to surrender. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. You will be treated according to the laws of war. This offer expires in 5 minutes. On his ship, Tarek stared at the human admiral's face. She was offering terms, something no Dominion commander would ever do. It was a sign of weakness, wasn't it? Or was it something else? What are our chances if we fight? He asked his tactical officer. Honestly, sir, none. We have 200 damaged ships. They have fresh forces, superior tactics, and they know this system better than we do. If we fight, we die. Tarek considered his options. Pride demanded that he fight. Duty demanded that he survive to report what had happened here. And looking at Admiral Lane's face, he saw something that surprised him. She genuinely didn't want to kill them if she didn't have to. But she would without hesitation if he refused. Maintain defensive positions, he ordered. We will not surrender to primitives. Lane saw the refusal in the Vacrian commander's eyes before he even spoke. She'd hoped they would be smart enough to accept, but apparently, pride ran deep in the Dominion. Very well, she said quietly, cutting the channel. All ships prepare to engage. But give them a demonstration first. I want them to understand what they're refusing. Her fleet moved into attack positions around Europa. Then Lane gave an order that had been prepared specifically for this situation. launched the plasma torpedoes. These were experimental weapons, even more devastating than the Hellfire missiles. Each torpedo contained a miniature fusion reactor that would release all its energy in a single burst, creating a plasma field hot enough to vaporize anything it touched. Dr. Ross had warned that they were too dangerous to use near inhabited planets. But out here near Europa with nothing but ice and enemy ships, 6 torpedoes launched from Lane's flagship. They moved slowly, almost lazily, toward the Vakrian defensive formation. Tarek watched them approach on his display, wondering what kind of weapons they were. They didn't look particularly dangerous. Human primitives probably didn't have anything that could break through Vakrian shields anyway. The first torpedo detonated 5 kilometers from the nearest Vakrian ship. A sphere of plasma expanded outward, reaching temperatures of millions of degrees. The Vakrian shields designed to stop energy beams and projectiles simply ceased to exist. So did the 20 ships closest to the detonation. The second torpedo killed 15 more ships. The third destroyed 18. By the time the fourth torpedo detonated, Tarek finally understood what the human admiral had been offering. A chance to live. All ships cease fire. He screamed into his communicator. "We surrender! We surrender!" The fifth and sixth torpedoes never detonated. Lane had given the abort signal the moment she saw the Vakrian ships powering down their weapons. She was a warrior, not a murderer. She'd made her point. "Boarding teams, secure those vessels," Lane ordered. "Anyone who resists, stun them. Anyone who cooperates, treat them well. Let's show them how civilized species fight wars." As human marines boarded the Vakrian ships, Tarek stood in his command center with his hands raised. A human major, whose name tag read Taylor, approached with his weapon lowered but ready. "I am Vice Commander Tarek," he said in broken English, which he'd learned from the intelligence files. "I surrender my fleet to you," Taylor nodded. "Smart choice. Come with me, sir. We have some questions for you." Over the next several hours, Earth's forces secured the surviving Vakrian vessels. In total, only 17 ships had survived the battle and subsequent hunt. 17 out of 9,700. The rest were debris, scattered across the solar system as a testament to what happened when you underestimated humanity. Dr. Helen Ross and Commander Peter Hall began interrogating the Vakrian prisoners at a secure facility on Mars. Hall was Earth's top intelligence officer, with experience extracting information from uncooperative subjects, but to his surprise, the Vakrians were eager to talk. "We need to understand your combat doctrine," Ross explained to a captured Vakrian science officer. "How your shields work, how your weapons function, how your faster-than-light drives operate." The science officer looked at her with something that might have been respect. "You beat us. You have the right to our knowledge. That is how the Dominion has always operated. The strong take from the weak. Is that how you see us?" Hall asked. "As strong? We see you as terrifying," the science officer replied honestly. "The Dominion has conquered 47 species over the past 1,000 years. None of them fought like you did. Most surrendered after we destroyed their primary fleet. The ones who resisted were overwhelmed by our numbers. But you? You turned our numbers against us. You used tactics we'd never seen before, and you fought with a ferocity that suggests you actually enjoy war." Ross and Hall exchanged glances. The alien wasn't wrong. Humanity had spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other. When faced with an external threat, all that knowledge and experience had been focused outward. "Tell me about the Dominion," Ross said. "How large is it? How many ships do they have? Will they send another fleet?" The science officer's expression became even more fearful. "The Dominion spans 400 star systems. They have millions of ships." The Vakrian ship traveled alone through the void, carrying its precious and terrible cargo back to Dominion space. Inside its computer core was a complete record of the battle at Earth, along with President Hayes' message. The crew consisted of just 3 Vakrians, the minimum needed to operate the vessel. They barely spoke during the journey, still traumatized by what they'd witnessed. When they finally arrived at the Dominion capital world of Vakros Prime, they were immediately escorted to the High Council chambers. The council consisted of 12 of the most powerful beings in Dominion space, leaders who had guided the Empire through 1,000 years of conquest and expansion. Supreme Counselor Vakran sat at the center of the semicircular table, his 4 eyes fixed on the 3 survivors who stood before him. Behind them, the data from Earth played on a massive holographic display. 9,700 ships, Vakran said slowly, his voice echoing in the chamber, and only 17 survived. Explain how this is possible. The science officer from the ship who had spent time being interrogated by Dr. Ross stepped forward. His name was Kelrin, and he'd seen more of human capabilities than any other survivor. Supreme Counselor, we underestimated them. The initial intelligence report was wrong. Humans are not primitive. They are a species that has survived 10,000 years of continuous warfare against themselves. They have perfected the art of killing in ways we never imagined. Show me, Vecran commanded. Kelrin activated the battle recordings. The council watched in silence as the human trap unfolded. They saw the asteroid belt come alive with hidden weapons. They saw the lunar mass drivers destroy ship after ship. They saw the drone swarms overwhelm Dominion vessels with tactics that seemed impossible to counter. But what truly disturbed the council was the human boarding actions. They watched as human marines, armed with relatively primitive weapons, fought through Vakrian ships with a ferocity that suggested they were enjoying themselves. One particular recording showed Major Chris Taylor and his team fighting through a corridor, their movements coordinated with a precision that spoke of countless hours of training. They're warriors, another counselor said softly. True warriors. Not soldiers who fight because they're ordered to, but beings who understand combat at a fundamental level. The recording continued. The council watched as Earth's fleet, smaller but far more innovative, tore through Vakrian formations. They saw Admiral Murphy's tactical brilliance, Commander Morrison's precise coordination, and Captain Stone's relentless pursuit of fleeing vessels. Then came President Hayes's message. Her face filled the display, and every counselor leaned forward to listen. To the leaders of the Vakrian Dominion, she began, her voice calm but carrying an edge of steel. You sent 10,000 ships to conquer my world. We destroyed them. If you send more, we will destroy those too. Earth is not interested in your empire or your wars. Leave us alone and we'll leave you alone. But if you threaten us again, we will bring the same devastation to your worlds that we brought to your fleet. This is not a bluff. This is a promise. The message ended. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. What do we know about this Admiral Murphy? Vecran asked. Kelrin pulled up a file. He's their primary military commander. 53 years old. He fought in their last major conflict, something they call the Resource Wars, which killed millions of humans. He's considered one of their most brilliant tactical minds. But Supreme Counselor, he's not unique. Earth has dozens of commanders with similar skills. Their entire species is trained for war. And their technology? Inferior to ours in most ways, but they use it more creatively. They combine old and new concepts in ways we never considered. For example, their mass drivers are based on technology thousands of years old, but they've refined it to devastating effect, and they're adapting quickly. We gave them examples of our shield technology. Our weapons are faster than light drives, and they're already reverse engineering everything. Counselor Thera, who commanded the Dominion's scientific division, spoke up. You gave them our technology? We were defeated, Kelrin replied simply. According to Dominion law, the victors have the right to claim all knowledge from the defeated. We answered their questions honestly. Then we've made them even more dangerous, Thera said grimly. A species that already destroyed a Dominion fleet will now have access to our best technology. Within a decade, they could be building ships that rival our own. Vecran stood from his seat, his expression troubled. What do the other species think of this? Word is spreading, another counselor replied. The Talarian Republic has already sent diplomatic overtures to Earth. So have the Orion Collective and the Free Worlds Alliance. Everyone wants to know more about the species that defeated the Dominion. On Earth, 6 months had passed since the battle. The planet was transforming at an incredible pace. Dr. Helen Ross led a team of thousands working around the clock to understand and adapt Vakrian technology. The secrets they'd extracted from the prisoners were proving more valuable than anyone had imagined. We've got the shield generators working, Ross announced at the morning briefing. Chief Engineer Lucy Barnes stood beside her, grinning with pride. How effective are they? Admiral Murphy asked. Better than the Vakrian ones, Barnes replied. We've improved the design by about 30%. Turns out they were using an inefficient power distribution system. We fixed it. Murphy shook his head in amazement. We've had their technology for 6 months and we're already making it better. That's what humans do, Ross said with a smile. We take something and improve it. Always have, always will. Construction yards in Earth orbit were working at full capacity, building a new generation of warships. These vessels combined human innovation with alien technology, creating hybrids that were more powerful than either civilization could produce alone. The new flagship, UES Indomitable, was nearly complete. It would be 3 times the size of any previous human vessel, and armed with weapons that could challenge anything in the Dominion fleet. But the biggest change was happening beyond Earth's solar system. Captain Eric Stone stood on the bridge of the newly commissioned UES Pathfinder, humanity's first true deep space exploration vessel. They'd used captured Vacrian jump drives to travel 30 light-years from Earth, and now they were approaching first contact with another species. "We're being hailed," his communications officer announced. "It's the Tellarian Republic. They're welcoming us to their space." Stone straightened his uniform. "Open a channel. Let's meet our new neighbors." The Tellarian who appeared on the view screen was nothing like a Vacrian. Where the Vacrians were angular and aggressive-looking, the Tellarians were shorter, with fur-covered bodies and large, curious eyes. They looked almost friendly. "Welcome, Captain Stone," the Tellarian said in perfect English. They'd clearly been studying humanity. "I am Ambassador Corrin. On behalf of the Tellarian Republic, I invite you to visit our capital world. We've been hoping to meet the species that defeated the Dominion." "We'd be honored," Stone replied. "But I should clarify, we didn't defeat the Dominion. We defeated one of their fleets." Corrin's expression suggested amusement. "Captain, you don't understand. The Dominion has never lost a major battle before. Never. For 1,000 years, they've conquered everyone they've encountered. You're the first to not only survive, but to utterly destroy their forces. That changes everything in our galaxy." Over the next weeks, humanity learned the truth about galactic politics. The Vacrian Dominion was the most powerful empire in known space, but they weren't unopposed. The Tellarian Republic led a coalition of species who resisted Dominion expansion, fighting a cold war that occasionally turned hot. Now Earth represented a new factor in the equation. "They want us to join their coalition," Stone reported back to Earth. "They're offering technology, trade agreements, and military alliances." President Hayes discussed the offer with her advisors. Admiral Murphy was cautious, General Paul Griffin was intrigued, and Dr. Ross was excited about the potential for new technology exchanges. "What do you think?" Hayes asked Murphy directly. "I think we need allies," Murphy replied. "The Dominion is vast. If they decide to come back in force, we can't fight them alone. But we need to be careful. We don't want to trade one empire for another." Hayes nodded. "Agreed. Tell the Tellarians we're interested, but we negotiate as equals. Earth doesn't bow to anyone." Back on Vacros Prime, the Dominion High Council was locked in heated debate. Some counselors wanted immediate revenge, demanding that they send a massive fleet to crush Earth once and for all. Others urged caution, pointing out that another defeat would be catastrophic for Dominion prestige. "We must consider our position carefully," Counselor Thera argued. "If we attack Earth again and fail, every species in our empire will see us as vulnerable. Rebellions will start. Our power will crumble." "Then we ensure we don't fail," Vecran replied. "We send overwhelming force. 500,000 ships. We turn Earth into an asteroid field." "And what if they defeat that fleet too?" Thera shot back. "These humans have proven themselves to be the most dangerous species we've ever encountered. They think differently than we do. They fight differently. They adapt faster than any species in our records. We need to study them." 1 year after the battle, Earth looked like a different world. The skyline of every major city was now dotted with defense platforms and shield generators. Orbital stations hung in space like metal moons, each one capable of defending against a fleet 10 times the size of the one that had attacked. Humanity had taken the lessons from the Vacrian invasion and transformed them into a defensive network that would make any future attacker think twice. Admiral Jack Murphy stood in the newly completed Earth Defense Command Center, which had been moved from Geneva to a secure location deep beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility could withstand a direct nuclear strike and continue operating. Around him, holographic displays showed the entire solar system in real time, with every ship, station, and defensive platform marked and tracked. "Status report," Murphy asked Commander Kate Morrison, who now served as his permanent second-in-command. "All systems operational, sir. We have 200 active warships in the solar system, with another 300 under construction. The Indomitable and her sister ships are conducting exercises near Saturn. Our sensor network extends out to 50 astronomical units in all directions. Nothing gets within range of Earth without us knowing about it. Murphy nodded with satisfaction. But the real changes weren't just military. Earth had joined the galactic community, and that changed everything. Dr. Helen Ross entered the command center accompanied by Chief Engineer Lucy Barnes. Both women looked exhausted but excited. "We've done it," Ross announced without preamble. "The first human-designed faster-than-light drive is complete and ready for testing. It's faster and more efficient than the Vacrian version. We're calling it the Murphy drive." The Admiral raised an eyebrow. "You named it after me?" "You bought us the time to develop it," Ross replied with a smile. "Seemed appropriate. We're installing it in the prototype ship tomorrow. If tests go well, we'll have an entire fleet using it within 6 months." Barnes pulled up a holographic display showing the new drive specifications. "We didn't just copy the Vacrians, sir. We improved on their design by combining it with some theoretical work humans did decades ago. Our version is about 40% faster and uses half the energy." "How is that possible?" Morrison asked. "We've only had their technology for a year." "Because we think differently," Ross explained. "The Vacrians built their empire on conquest, so their technology prioritized military applications. We built our civilization on exploration and innovation, so we naturally look for ways to make things better, faster, more efficient. Give us a problem, and we'll find 3 different solutions the original inventors never considered." President Linda Hayes arrived at the command center for her monthly security briefing. She looked more relaxed than she had a year ago, though the weight of leadership still showed in her eyes. The battle had aged her, but it had also made her one of the most respected leaders in galactic history. "Good morning, Admiral," she said, taking her seat at the conference table. "What's our status with the Tellarian Republic?" "Excellent, ma'am," Murphy replied. "Captain Stone has established formal diplomatic relations. They've agreed to a mutual defense treaty and technology exchange. We're also in talks with the Orion Collective and several smaller independent worlds. Earth is no longer alone. And the Dominion?" Murphy's expression darkened. "They're watching us. Our intelligence suggests they're building up forces along their border, but they haven't made any aggressive moves. I think we scared them more than they want to admit." On the Vacrian homeworld of Vakros Prime, Supreme Counselor Vecron reviewed the latest intelligence reports from Earth with growing concern. The humans had not only recovered from the battle but had somehow become stronger. Their technology was advancing at an impossible rate, and they were building alliances with species the Dominion had tried for decades to intimidate. "They've developed their own faster-than-light drive," his science advisor reported. "According to our spies, it's superior to ours. They're also working on new weapon systems that we've never seen before. Projects with names like Graviton Lance and Quantum Disruptor. How long until they have a fleet that can challenge us directly?" Vecron asked. "If their current rate of development continues, 5 years, maybe less. They're producing ships faster than any species in recorded history. And they're not just copying our technology, they're innovating, creating entirely new approaches that we never considered." Counselor Thera entered the chamber looking troubled. "We have a bigger problem. 3 minor species in our empire have just declared independence, citing Earth's victory as proof that the Dominion can be resisted. If this spreads, we could lose dozens of worlds." Vikran slammed his fist on the table. "All because of one species that got lucky." "It wasn't luck," Thera replied quietly. "You know it wasn't. They outsmarted us, outfought us, and did it with inferior technology. The entire galaxy now knows that the Dominion is not invincible. We need to adapt or we'll lose everything we've built." Back on Earth, former Interceptor pilot Jake Foster was training the next generation of combat pilots. He stood in front of a class of eager young men and women, all of them volunteers who wanted to defend their home world. "The key to surviving in space combat is unpredictability," Foster explained. "The Vacrians fought with rigid formations and predictable tactics. That's why we beat them. You need to think 3 moves ahead, use your environment, and never ever do what the enemy expects." One of the students raised her hand. "Lieutenant Foster, is it true you destroyed 4 Vacrian ships by yourself?" Foster smiled, remembering that chaotic battle. 5, actually. But I had help from a lot of very brave people. Remember, wars aren't won by heroes acting alone. They're won by teams working together, each person doing their job perfectly. After class, Foster met with Major Chris Taylor, who now commanded Earth's elite Marine force. The two men had become close friends during the battle, bonded by shared danger and victory. "How's the training going?" Taylor asked. "Good, these kids are hungry to learn, but I worry about them. They didn't see what we saw. They don't understand how close we came to losing everything." "Maybe that's for the best," Taylor replied. "Let them be confident. We can carry the weight of knowing how hard it really was." At the Mars Research Facility, Vice Commander Tarek sat in a comfortable cell that was less like a prison and more like quarters. He'd been a model prisoner, cooperating fully with human researchers and providing valuable insights into Dominion technology and culture. In return, he'd been treated well, given access to human entertainment and literature, and allowed to communicate with other Vacrian prisoners. Dr. Ross visited him regularly, and over time something unexpected had developed: respect. Tarek had come to admire human ingenuity, while Ross appreciated his honest assessment of Dominion capabilities. "I've been reading your history," Tarek said during one of their conversations. "Your world wars, your conflicts, your struggles. I understand now why you fought so fiercely. You've been preparing for war your entire existence, even if you didn't know it." "We prefer peace," Ross replied, "but we're very good at war when we have to be." "The Dominion will come again," Tarek said quietly. "Not soon, but eventually. They can't allow your victory to stand. It undermines everything they've built. Let them come. We'll be ready." Tarek studied her face, seeing absolute confidence there. "You truly believe you can defeat the entire Dominion?" "I believe we'll do whatever it takes to protect our world. History has shown that no empire lasts forever. Maybe it's time for the Dominion to learn that lesson." Captain Eric Stone returned to Earth after a 6-month mission exploring nearby star systems. His ship, the Pathfinder, had visited 12 different worlds and made first contact with 3 new species. Earth was rapidly expanding its presence in the galaxy. Stone reported directly to President Hayes and Admiral Murphy, showing them maps of nearby systems and describing the civilizations he'd encountered. "Most of them are friendly or at least curious," Stone explained. "They all know what happened with the Vacrians. Some are afraid of us, thinking we're going to become conquerors ourselves. Others want to ally with us for protection against the Dominion. A few are just excited to meet a species that actually defeated them." "What's your assessment?" Hayes asked. "We have an opportunity here, ma'am. The galaxy is much bigger than we thought, with thousands of inhabited worlds. The Dominion only controls a portion of it. There's room for Earth to grow, to explore, to build relationships, but we need to be careful. Power attracts challenges. The stronger we become, the more enemies we'll make." Murphy agreed, "Which is why we need to keep building our defenses. Peace through strength has always been humanity's best strategy." One evening, as the sun set over Earth Defense Command, Murphy stood alone on the observation deck, looking up at the stars. A year ago, those stars had hidden an approaching threat that nearly destroyed humanity. Now they represented opportunity, adventure, and humanity's future among the cosmos. Commander Morrison joined him, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and stood beside him in comfortable silence. "Do you think we'll ever truly be safe?" she asked. "No," Murphy replied honestly. "There will always be threats out there. New empires, new dangers, new challenges. But that's okay. Humanity has